think about royal events and sort of big royal occasions, you really only think about one place, and it's this one place, Buckingham Palace, and in particular the Buckingham Palace balcony, the cause of so much family friction of late. But if it's so popular with us, why is it not popular with the British monarchy? And more importantly, why does no one in the British monarchy seemingly want to live there? As ever, let me explain. King Charles and Camilla are unlikely ever to live at Buckingham Palace. And more importantly, Buckingham Palace is the headquarters of the monarchy. It has its international profile equalled only by the White House. It is, however, something of a paradox. That is what is seen by the world as a symbol of royal splendour. Now, reportedly, very little appeal to the royals does Buckingham Palace have. There is, in fact, the question mark over who will occupy it, if anyone, in the future. Queen Elizabeth was the best known head of state of all time, and her image was obviously closely identified with Buckingham Palace. Yet, as we now all know, her preference was in fact Windsor. She said she felt it was more homely, even though, of course, this was surrounded by very high walls and is a castle. But initially she started time there only at the weekends. But then, in the final years, she spent much of her time at Windsor, far more than in Buckingham Palace. And of course, Windsor was her main childhood home. Now, the bigger problem for Buckingham Palace is simply this. It's currently going through a 10-year renovation plan, costing millions of pounds. Now, a lot of people are saying, is this a waste of expenditure? Because this has not been updated, well, in fact, for many, many years, dating back, in fact, 70 plus years. Is this the real reason, though, why the royals do not wish to move back in? Buckingham Palace, has always been a problem, seemingly, for the British monarchy. In fact, our late and wonderful monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, 70 years on the throne, was not really a fan to move in there. In fact, she had a battle with her very favourite Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Winston Churchill. Now, it was his persuasion that basically moved everything forward. You see, the Duke and the new Queen wanted to carry on living at Clarence House. You can understand this, it's a stone's throw away from Buckingham Palace, and the Queen and the Duke felt they could just pop back for state occasions, visits, that sort of stuff. But no, Winston Churchill demanded that she had to be based there. The British public were paying for this, and they expected to see their Queen living in a palace, not a house. Naturally, she relented, but according to a very good source, this created a lot of stress for the very young Queen. She didn't understand why she couldn't get her own way. Then we have Queen Victoria. She apparently didn't like it, not because of the style or the splendour of the palace, but because apparently she was plagued with rats. Not rats, of course, of government ministers, but rats quite literally in the palace. Sewage was not a strong point when Queen Victoria first moved in to Buckingham Palace. Now, one of the very special things associated with Buckingham Palace, particularly if you are a celebrity, is the investiture. This is, of course, where you receive your knighthood or your damehood. Now, I was lucky enough to meet many people that have been knighted, presented as dames by our late and wonderful monarch. Sir Norman Wisdom, the very prolific comedian who made Her Majesty laugh while walking down the corridor for his knighthood, basically said, you felt it was a special moment. That's not to take away from Windsor Castle, which is of course where investitures are also taking place. But I think if you're a showbiz person, you really want to then come out into the courtyard with all the guards around you, and everybody, the press is allowed to come in and take pictures and interview you in that setting. Of course, it's not just investitures as well. It's the place where British Prime Ministers are normally selected to come and meet their monarch in order to form a government. Now, we've seen many famous people climb out of the car with that wonderful arena of success around them. But of course, Buckingham Palace also has sadness attached too, because it's the very same place where said Prime Minister normally returns to tender his resignation in order for someone else to take over their job. According to a very good source, the person who really felt it most was none other than the wonderful and former British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Margaret Thatcher. Apparently the Queen had to privately console her because she was so emotionally upset at being removed from office. That's the power and the history of this splendid building. So what about the future of Buckingham Palace? Who will live there? Because as we know, the Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine and William, are not necessarily fans also. But it's a big sprawling place, 775 rooms, the epicentre of royal life. There was a story emulating recently that His Majesty the King may turn elements of it into a museum. Well, it's kind of partly that already because, as you know, currently Buckingham Palace is open to the public. But more importantly, will this now remain the epicentre of royal life? If you turn it into a museum, will it still have the same clout around the world? This is truly up for debate, and as I said at the very start of this film, it's unlikely that King Charles and Queen Camilla will ever move back into Buckingham Palace. So it really will be up to the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales, and moving further along, Prince George. But not so long ago, Prince William said a very profound statement. He was asked about the future of the monarchy and would it still remain perhaps in the time of Prince George. And he said, if they still want us. So of course, everything is literally up in the air. The only remaining factor about royal life is this: Buckingham Palace. And everybody here in the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and the rest of the world certainly still want it to remain, quite simply, the centre of royal life. As ever, I'd love to know what you think to this particular story in the comments below. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.